Never trust a computer you can't throw out a window. Steve Wozniak, American electronics engineer, co-founder of Apple Inc. This is a bit of a funny story, I suppose, from when I used to work as a delivery driver at a fairly popular pizza chain in the early 2000s. I won't tell you which one, but it's one that isn't very popular anymore. They used to have these old monochrome green screen computers in all their shops to handle all the orders, noting that there was no such thing as online ordering or anything like that. I guess their IT system was at least a decade or two old at the time, and it certainly showed. Luckily, as a delivery driver, I didn't have to use their computers very often, but when I did, it was a nightmare. Now, don't get me wrong, I like IT, but these systems were so dated that using them was torture, at least for a new user. For example, to create a new order, you had to push CTRL SHFT N. There was no mouse, you had to use keyboard shortcuts for everything. Now you might think that's not too bad, it tells you what to do. Well, let me tell you, this was the most user-friendly screen. For everything else, you had to look up the shortcuts in a laminated manual next to the computer, or ask somebody who knew. After starting a new order, you had to type in the customer's name in the first box, but once you typed it in, there was no obvious way to move the cursor to the next field. It turns out the command was CTRL ALT N, which was very similar to the CTRL SHFT N to start a new order. And yes, if you accidentally pressed CTRL SHFT N, everything would clear, and you'd have to start all over again. So you'd type in the name, press CTRL ALT N to move to phone number, type that in, CTRL ALT N to move to address, type that in, but if you made a mistake in a previous field, you had to use CTRL SHFT B to go backwards. But when you did that, the previous field would be deleted, so you had to type that all in again. And then when you hit CTRL ALT N to go forwards, it would clear that field as well. So basically, nobody ever corrected mistakes unless it was absolutely vital. I don't know who designed this, but I think they were having a laugh. To move on to the next section, the shortcut was something stupid like Control-Tab/. I honestly can't remember exactly what it was, but it was something equally ridiculous. Remembering there was no other way to do this, you just had to know these shortcuts, or look them up. So you'd go onto PZ01, which stood for Pizza 1, and you had to type in a 4-character code. If you didn't get it right, it just wouldn't let you move on. So for example, LPPT stood for large pepperoni on a pan base with tomato sauce. LPPB if you wanted one with barbecue sauce. To add another pizza, you had to do something like Control-Alt-A. Pushing the Enter key did nothing. SCTT, small chicken thin base with tomato sauce. FHTB, family-sized Hawaiian thin base with barbecue sauce. You get the idea. But when they added new variations of pizza, they added new codes using whatever spare letters were left. So for example, FIPT was a family-sized ham and cheese pan base with tomato sauce. And then you would push Control-Tab/ to move on to the drinks section. Drinks only used a 2-letter code, so for example CL meant a 1.25 litre bottle of Coke, Control-Alt-A to add another drink, CX meant a 2-litre bottle of Coke, and again they ran out of sensible codes for things, so ZS was a can of Pasito, I think. And finally, you'd move on to the other menu, where GB meant garlic bread, fair enough, but HC meant cheesy garlic bread. Go figure. Luckily, there was a sign placed up on the wall that showed all these stupid codes, remembering if you typed in an incorrect code, it just wouldn't work. Finally, you'd press Control-Shift-P to move on to the payment screen, which would show you a list of all the ordered items, as codes, plus the final price. Don't ask me how you'd go back to correct an error. Luckily, I never had to. This screen also had a large capitalized message saying, "Don't forget to submit the order," with no indication on how to actually do that. All I remember, it was equally ridiculous, something like Control-Shift-Alt-S, and then you had to hit the return key. Once you did that, you were immediately taken back to the home screen with no indication whether the order went through or not. You just had to check with the kitchen. Now, I know this sounds ridiculously complicated, but people got used to it. It's like a prisoner who becomes institutionalized. The workers were able to enter pizza orders with lightning speed. One manager, who always worked on a Friday night, the busiest night of the week, was able to fill in these orders faster than the customers could even say them. He literally knew all the codes and knew how to fix any order quickly and efficiently. But a few months later, we got a memo from head office telling us that a new computer system was going to be installed over the weekend. All stores were to be ready to use it by Monday. The new system was great, in my opinion. There was a mouse, there were drop-down menus for all the pizzas and drinks and so on. It was exactly what you'd expect of a modern-day pizza ordering system. But the staff didn't like it. They were so confused how to use it. They found it slow to use, the mouse was a hindrance, they didn't know what the shortcuts were, their old shortcuts didn't work and often caused errors. Although we started using the system on a Monday, the quietest day of the week, so many staff had so many troubles taking orders. They were so used to using their crappy green screen computers with all their nonsensical pizza codes, they found this new sleek system absolutely unbearable. That night I had a late shift, so I worked until 11 p.m. The manager who was on that night, the one who was really good at using the old system, asked me to go for a walk with him after work. I knew he had a hard time that night with the new system. We went down to the car park and he lit up a cigarette, and then he lost it. What the f*** do they think they're doing? I've worked here for f***ing 10 years and they pull this shit on me. I mean, what the actual f***? My life was going so well, and then they had to go and change the f***ing computers. I mean, what the f*** were they thinking? I used to be able to type in any pizza code, and now they don't even f***ing work. F***ing cunts. If it ain't f***ing broke, why the f*** are they trying to fix it? All they've done is made my life a living f***ing nightmare. I mean, we used to be able to go Control-Tab//. Now that doesn't even f***ing work. I mean, every time I went to press Control Shift Alt S, the f***ing thing errored on me every f***ing time. At that point, he literally started crying. I think he had a mental breakdown. I can't f***ing do this anymore. I mean, they f***ing destroyed my life with this shit. How can they expect anybody to work under these conditions? A couple of weeks later, that manager was gone. He wasn't coping well and felt that the company screwed him royally. A few new staff were hired and, unsurprisingly, found it pretty easy to use the new system. But most of the old workers were constantly frustrated. In their eyes, the old system was perfection. It did everything they needed, and they could actually use it a lot quicker than the new system. A trained user on the new system simply couldn't enter orders as fast as an expert on the old monochrome system. There's probably a lesson to learn here somewhere for any budding system developer. If you do make a new system, not only does it have to meet the requirements of the business, it has to match existing processes, or else you're going to get a lot of people frustrated and upset. I didn't last much longer in that job, not because I disliked the computer system, but because I was severely underpaid and found myself a lot better job working overseas in Japan. My time as a pizza boy was over.